October 8, 1918. The Argonne Forest, northeastern France. Dawn has not fully broken when the patrol begins to move. The light is thin and gray, filtered through a canopy of broken branches and autumn leaves. Rain from the previous night still clings to the ground. Mud pulls at boots. Fog settles low in the ravines and hollows, softening sound and shrinking distance. This sector of the Argonne has been contested for days. The American advance, part of the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, has slowed here under sustained German resistance. The terrain favors the defender. Steep slopes, dense forest, and narrow ravines channel movement and restrict visibility. Machine gun positions have been dug into higher ground, arranged in depth, with overlapping fields of fire that cut across every practical route forward. Repeated frontal attacks have failed. German gunners have learned the ground well. When American infantry rises from cover, the response is immediate. Short, disciplined bursts sweep the slopes. Progress is measured in yards, paid for in casualties. The order passed down shortly before dawn is limited in scope and understated in tone. A small detachment will move through the ravine, attempt to reach the rear of the German positions, and silence the machine guns that are halting the advance. There is no promise of support. No artillery preparation is scheduled. Speed and surprise are the only advantages available. 17 men are selected. Among them is Corporal Alvin York. York is 29 years old. He comes from Pall Mall, Tennessee, a remote farming community in the Cumberland Mountains. He is tall, lean, and quiet, known within the company for marksmanship rather than leadership. He has no formal military ambition. His promotion to corporal is recent and administrative, not a reflection of command authority in this operation. He carries a .30 caliber M1917 Enfield rifle. It is accurate, heavy, and familiar in his hands. He also carries a Colt M1911 pistol, standard issue for non-commissioned officers. York is not the patrol leader. The officer in charge is a lieutenant whose name matters less than his position. He gives brief instructions, pointing out the general route on a map that shows little detail beyond contour lines and grid references. The objective is simple in description and complex in execution. Move through the ravine. Climb the slope. Neutralize the machine guns from behind. The patrol steps off before full daylight. They move in a loose formation, maintaining spacing where the terrain allows it. In places, the ravine narrows, forcing them into single file. Branches catch on equipment. Packs shift. No one speaks above a whisper. Artillery is quiet for the moment. The absence is temporary and everyone knows it. The patrol descends deeper into the ravine. The ground slopes sharply downward, funneling movement toward a low point choked with brush and fallen timber. Visibility drops further. Sound becomes unreliable. A snapped twig echoes like a footstep. A distant shot could be anywhere. They reach the rear of the German position without being detected. At first, the plan appears to work. A small German command post is encountered along the slope, partially concealed by trees. Several enemy soldiers are taken by surprise. They are disarmed quickly, their weapons taken, their movements controlled with gestures rather than shouted orders. For a brief moment, the patrol holds the advantage. Then the machine guns open fire. The sound is sudden and close. It comes not from a single position but from several higher up the slope. The first bursts rake the hillside where the patrol is beginning to gather prisoners. Dirt explodes upward. Leaves are shredded. Men drop instinctively, scrambling for cover that barely exists. Within seconds, 6 Americans are dead. 3 more are wounded, some severely. The lieutenant falls among the first hit. Command disintegrates almost immediately, not from panic but from loss. There is no time to reorganize. No clear line of sight. No safe direction to move. The patrol collapses inward, reduced to scattered individuals pinned to the ground. York lies prone behind a slight rise in the terrain. The cover is minimal, but it breaks the line of fire just enough to keep him alive. He can hear the machine guns clearly now. The cadence is steady. These are not inexperienced crews. They fire in short, controlled bursts, conserving ammunition, adjusting elevation and traverse with discipline. The gunners are firing downhill. Their attention is fixed forward, toward the main American lines. They do not expect organized resistance from below and behind. York assesses what he can see. He knows retreat is nearly impossible. To withdraw downhill under direct fire would expose the wounded and likely kill the rest. To remain pinned guarantees the same outcome, only slower. There is a narrow option between the two. York begins to fire. He does not fire rapidly. He fires deliberately. When German soldiers rise from the machine gun pits to charge downhill, he shoots them in sequence, starting with those closest. He uses the same method he learned hunting in the mountains. Pick the target, control the breath, squeeze. When the machine guns swing toward him, he shifts position slightly, using folds in the ground to break their angle. When the guns return to covering the forward slope, he fires again. The exchange is uneven and prolonged. German soldiers attempt to rush him with bayonets, charging down the slope in small groups. York waits until they are close enough that he does not need to adjust for distance. He fires calmly, one shot at a time until the charge collapses. Minutes pass this way. York does not track them as minutes. He tracks them by ammunition and movement. He reloads when necessary. He moves only when the ground demands it. The firing does not stop all at once. One machine gun falls silent. Then another. The intervals between bursts grow longer. The rhythm breaks. York does not lift his head immediately. Silence in the Argonne is not reassurance. It is ambiguous. Guns may be repositioning. Crews may be waiting for movement. A sudden rush could come at any moment. York remains where he is, rifle raised, breathing controlled. Smoke drifts through the trees, breaking the hillside into fragments. From his position he cannot see the entire slope. Any gun still intact would still have a clear shot. He advances a few steps, then stops. No fire comes. He moves again, slower now, placing each foot carefully. The forest offers no confirmation, only absence. He cannot know whether the enemy has withdrawn, regrouped, or simply chosen silence. When he reaches the next rise, he sees abandoned weapons first. Machine guns left where they stood. Ammunition belts hanging loose. Boxes open, half empty. Only then does he begin to accept what the silence may mean. Even then he does not lower his rifle. A voice calls out from beyond the slope. It is cautious and measured, spoken in English with a heavy accent. It tests the silence, waiting for a response. York does not answer. He shifts his stance, adjusts his grip, and watches the tree lean ahead. When a German officer steps into view, York studies him closely. The man's posture is rigid. His hands are visible. This is not surrender driven by panic. It is calculation under pressure. York gestures with the rifle. Lay down weapons. Move forward. The officer hesitates, glancing back toward the ridge. For a moment the decision hangs. One shouted command could bring the guns back to life. One signal could turn the slope into fire again. Instead, the officer signals behind him. The first soldiers rise slowly. They watch York's hands. They measure his calm. York does not hurry them. He does not shout. He lets the stillness do the work. More Germans emerge from cover. Then more. What begins as a tentative surrender becomes momentum. Each man stepping forward confirms to the next that resistance has already failed. York gives short commands. He positions himself where he can be seen. He never claims authority he does not possess. Calm replaces firepower. Only when the line of prisoners stretches farther than the slope itself does he recognize the scale of what is happening. And even then he does not relax. The descent begins without ceremony. York turns first, stepping downhill, placing himself where the prisoners can see him clearly. He does not rush the movement. Speed would invite disorder. Control depends on predictability now, not force. The German officer speaks quietly to his men. The words are short. Whatever he says, it keeps them in line. Rifles and equipment are left behind where York indicates. Pistols are surrendered. Hands remain visible. The column forms unevenly at first. Men cluster instinctively, seeking familiarity. York corrects it with gestures, spacing them out, forcing a line rather than a mass. He positions the remaining Americans along the flanks where they can be seen, even though there are too few of them to enforce the formation by strength alone. Visibility is the weapon now. The ravine narrows as they descend. The slope steepens. Mud pulls at boots, slowing movement. Several prisoners stumble. York stops the column each time, waits until order returns, then moves again. No one speaks unnecessarily. The imbalance is obvious. More than 100 prisoners. Fewer than a dozen Americans capable of fighting. Any coordinated resistance could overwhelm them in moments. York knows this. The prisoners know it too. What holds them is uncertainty. They cannot see how many Americans are ahead. They cannot see how many are behind. They cannot see what lies beyond the next bend in the ravine. York uses that uncertainty deliberately, stopping and starting the column, forcing pauses that suggest control rather than hesitation. At one point, York raises his hand and the column halts. No explanation follows. He listens. The forest carries sound unpredictably. Somewhere beyond the trees there is movement. A footstep. A shifting branch. Or perhaps nothing at all. York waits, counting breaths, watching faces. Any sign of reaction among the prisoners would matter. Nothing happens. After several seconds he lowers his hand. The column moves again. The German officer remains cooperative. He walks near the front, occasionally repeating York's instructions in his own language. York allows it. Authority borrowed is still authority if it keeps order. As they move deeper into the ravine, the fog thickens again. Visibility drops to a few yards. The ground flattens slightly, then slopes upward toward the American lines. This is the most dangerous stretch. If German forces still occupy positions nearby, this is where an ambush would come. The column is stretched, constrained by terrain, unable to maneuver quickly in any direction. York tightens the spacing. He adjusts the pace. He keeps his rifle raised, not aimed but ready. His attention shifts constantly, from the prisoners to the treeline, from the ground ahead to the slope behind. The wounded Americans move with difficulty. York ensures they stay within sight. Their presence reinforces the illusion of cohesion. It suggests that this group has already passed through danger and survived it. After what feels like hours, shapes begin to emerge through the fog ahead. American helmets. Weapons rise on both sides almost simultaneously. Shouts carry down the ravine. Recognition signals are exchanged hurriedly. Officers move forward, trying to understand what they are seeing. The column stops. For a moment, no one moves. The prisoners stand quietly. The Americans stare. Then the questions begin. How many? Where did they come from? Where are the guns? The prisoners are counted once. Then again. Numbers are written down, then checked. The count keeps returning to the same figure. 132. Officers walk the line. They look at York, then at the prisoners, then back at York. Skepticism is immediate and practical. No one dismisses the report outright, but no one accepts it without confirmation either. York is asked to explain. He does so simply. He describes the ravine, the slope, the machine gun positions, the sequence of events. He does not embellish. He does not speculate. When he does not know something, he says so. Runners are sent back up the ravine to verify the abandoned positions. Maps are brought out. Coordinates are marked. The German officer is questioned separately. His account aligns with York's in its essentials. Only then does the disbelief begin to give way. The prisoners are marched farther back under heavier guard. York's role ends as abruptly as it began. He is directed to rejoin what remains of his unit. The war has not paused. German artillery resumes intermittently throughout the day. The regiment advances again, encountering resistance elsewhere along the line. Men fall. Orders change. Objectives shift. What happened in the ravine becomes one action among many, recorded in reports but not yet separated from the larger chaos of the offensive. In the days that follow, York is called in repeatedly. Statements are taken. Witnesses are questioned. Details are cross-checked. The army is careful with such claims. Numbers this large demand scrutiny. York repeats his account each time, unchanged. Eventually, the reports move upward through command channels. Division, Corps, Army. The significance of the action becomes clearer as its context is fully understood. The machine gun positions York neutralized had been responsible for halting the advance of multiple units. Their collapse had opened a critical gap in the German line. Recognition comes formally weeks later. York is promoted to sergeant. He is awarded the Medal of Honor. Citations are written. Language is chosen carefully, shaped to fit both accuracy and tradition. By then the war is nearing its end. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive continues until November. Casualties mount on both sides. The armistice comes on the 11th day of that month. York returns home after the war to a country eager for symbols of service and sacrifice. His actions are publicized widely. He becomes known far beyond the forest where they occurred. But the event itself remains unchanged by its retelling. On October 8, 1918, there were no speeches in the Argonne. No audience. No certainty of survival. There was only a stalled advance, a quiet corporal, and a series of decisions made under pressure, shaped by terrain, timing, and restraint. The forest absorbed the sound of the fighting and then closed in again. What endured was the record. And the understanding that in a war defined by mass and machinery, individual control, applied at the right moment, could still alter the course of events. The paperwork moves slowly. In the weeks following the action in the Argonne, the American Expeditionary Forces are consumed by scale. Entire divisions are in motion. Supply lines stretch across a devastated landscape. Casualty lists grow faster than they can be processed. Within that machinery, individual actions risk being absorbed and flattened into statistics. York's case resists that process. The reports from October 8 continue to circulate upward, accompanied by maps, witness statements, and corroborating German accounts. The numbers are checked repeatedly. 132 prisoners. Multiple machine gun positions neutralized. A patrol nearly destroyed, its objective achieved regardless. The army is cautious. Decorations at this level require certainty. Exaggeration is common in combat reports. Restraint is not. York's statements remain unchanged with each retelling. He does not improve them. He does not frame them for effect. He describes what he saw, what he did, and what he cannot be sure of. That consistency matters. When confirmation finally comes, it does so formally and without drama. Orders are typed. Signatures are added. York is promoted again, this time permanently. The Medal of Honor citation is drafted in language meant to endure beyond the war itself. By the time York is informed, the Argonne feels distant. The forest has been replaced by camps, roads, and railheads. The offensive has pushed forward. German resistance is weakening under the combined pressure of Allied advances along the entire Western Front. On November 11, 1918, the guns fall silent. The war ends not with clarity but with exhaustion. Men remain in position, uncertain at first whether the silence will hold. When it does, relief spreads unevenly, shaped by loss and disbelief rather than celebration. York remains in uniform for several months after the armistice. Demobilization is slow. Units are processed in stages. Equipment is turned in. Men wait. It is during this period that York's name begins to circulate beyond military channels. American newspapers pick up the story. Editors condense the action into headlines. The complexity of the ravine and the uncertainty of the moment are reduced to numbers and outcomes. A quiet corporal. A single engagement. 132 prisoners. The country, still absorbing the cost of the war, responds strongly. York is summoned to events he does not seek. He is photographed, interviewed, asked to repeat the story for audiences far removed from the forest where it occurred. He complies out of obligation, not enthusiasm. His accounts remain restrained. He avoids speculation and avoids credit beyond what he believes accurate. The attention weighs on him. York had entered the army reluctantly. He had wrestled with the moral implications of combat before ever reaching France. The action in the Argonne does not resolve those questions for him. It complicates them. When he finally returns home to Tennessee, the contrast is stark. Pall Mall is unchanged. The fields are the same. The hills are quiet. Life moves at the pace of seasons rather than operations. York returns not as a soldier in formation, but as an individual carrying experiences that do not translate easily into words. He resumes farming. He marries. He focuses his attention on education and community development, using his public recognition to advocate for schools and infrastructure in a region that has long been neglected. He does not pursue a military career. The years pass. As the First World War recedes into history, York's action remains one of its most frequently cited examples of individual initiative under fire. It is taught in military schools, referenced in official histories, and debated in memoirs and analyses. Not because it contradicts the nature of industrial warfare, but because it exists within it. York's success did not come from defying the conditions of the Western Front. It came from understanding them. He exploited terrain. He recognized the limits of enemy attention. He used restraint where aggression would have failed. He maintained control when chaos would have been easier. These are not romantic qualities. They are practical ones. In later years, as new wars reshaped the American military, York's story is revisited again and again. Sometimes it is simplified. Sometimes it is mythologized. The numbers remain, but the context is often lost. The context matters. On October 8, 1918, Alvin York did not set out to capture prisoners. He did not seek to alter the course of the battle single-handedly. He acted within a collapsing situation, responding to immediate constraints with the tools and training available to him. The result was extraordinary. The process was not. It was incremental. It was cautious. It was shaped by uncertainty at every step. That is what endures. The Argonne Forest no longer looks as it did in 1918. The ravines have softened. The scars have faded. Trees have grown where machine guns once stood. What remains is the record. A small patrol. A stalled advance. A quiet corporal whose decisions, made under pressure and without witness, held long enough to change an outcome. In a war measured in millions, the moment stands not because it was loud but because it was controlled. That is the legacy.